Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the August 31st, 2016 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. I'll note first that this meeting is being taped by the press, which is something I have to announce at the beginning of the meeting. And we'll ask if our town administrator, David Williams, could please read the agenda and indicate whether there's any amendments or things removed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we will add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair in advance and vote to approve or amend the agenda. One item is removing item number 6, that was consideration of use of electronic poll books. It was determined that no vote is needed on that, so the town clerk doesn't need to bring it in.
Well, the town clerk requested that be withdrawn, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. She'll be in at a later meeting to discuss early voting as well. And then there is an amendment to include discussion about farm pond docks. And that could go under selectmen items or town administrator report. For the rest of the agenda, selectmen recognition of longtime volunteers is up first. And the volunteers to be recognized are Doug Brody, Jim Campbell, Roger Demler, Bob Delaney, Charles Dowse, Frank Jenkins, Betsy Johnson, Robert Johnson, David Colleen, and Grace Shepard. In consideration of event permits, the two events are the Farm Pond Fishing Derby to benefit Wounded Warriors Project on September 25th and the annual Dover Sherborn Boosters Triathlon set for September 18th. Then consideration of advance of funds in lieu of borrowing for Chapter 90 Washington Street paving. And then an informational update on road improvements and Chapter 90 funding with Ed Wagner, the CM&D Director. Consideration of Housing Partnership Mission Statement with Addie Mae Weiss, the Chair of the Housing Partnership Committee. Then discussion of Fall Special Town Meeting that's scheduled for October 24th. Consideration of dates, articles, and warrant for that meeting. And then under routine business, an update on the hiring process that are in progress. Fire Department Chief Selection Committee appointments, complaint regarding demolition of 237 Washington Street. And then under selectmen items, we have reports, set the next meeting, consideration of minutes, consideration of payroll warrant, and then we expect to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session. Do you want me to read that citation now?
No, we can do it when we...
Okay. And that's it.
Okay, great. So we had a request, I heard, to amend the agenda to add a discussion of the Farm Pond docks under the town administrator report, to remove the request from the town clerk, or at her request, remove item number 6. And then I understood we were going to have some comments also on a couple of recently deceased longtime town administration people. Can we get an amendment to the agenda to reflect those changes? I mean, a motion to reflect those changes. Okay, move it. Second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. Now, I think before we do public comment, Paul, I know you had some words you wanted to say about two of our townspeople.
Indeed. The town has lost two. A former town employee and a present, or was a town employee at the time of death. Let me take it in the order of first the Ray Seneschal was our reservation manager at Farm Pond. He had a 35-year coaching career. He was a swim coach for the West Suburban YMCA. He was an assistant coach for Dover Sherborn High School. We also want to recognize the passing of Lucy Almation. Lucy was a long-time Sherborn resident, over 50 years. 21 years she served as our town clerk. I had occasion to work with her and found her always diligent, courteous, helpful as a town clerk. She was treasurer of the Massachusetts Town Clerks Association for 5 years. She served as president of the Middlesex County Town Clerks Association. In addition to her town clerk duties, she served on a variety of other committees: the Ambulance Usage Committee, the Computer Use Committee, the Employee Health Insurance Advisory Committee. So tonight we'd like to recognize and honor her service and Ray's service to the town. I and the board would like to extend our condolences to the families of these two departed. And if I might, could I ask for everybody to stand for a moment of silence? Could we all stand? In memory of Ray and Lucy.
Thank you, Paul. Next, we have a request for public comment from our town collector, Nancy Hess. Oh, she has 2 books with her. This could be long.
I said maybe you want to do your awards first. Well, I was reviewing our new system of online payments and the collecting for other departments. And because we've completed a cycle, we've completed the burn permit cycle, we've really completed the farm pond cycle. And at the last conversation about the burn permits, it became clear to me that there really wasn't an understanding of the what it took, because I think Sean had said it was like 100 permits, and actually we sold over 400 permits. So I'd like to just tell you, we've sold over 1,000 resident pond stickers, over 150 lottery, over 100 boat, over 200 over-the-counter building permits, and that doesn't include the electrical, the plumbing, the gas, which adds another couple of hundred. We've raised $63,000 in recreation, online, and over-the-counter. And the fire department has done over 100 of their inspection permits that have come through. Most of them have come through online. And we're now changing the process for the building inspector. He's not taking money in when the applications come in. He emails them when the application is ready and emails them the amount, and they have the option of paying those online or over the counter. It's been a problem because the selectman's office is open longer than our office is, and so I've tried to cover extra hours, and that's not sustainable. I actually have my clerk coming on Friday so that they can stamp receipts. Now the building permits can be picked up anytime if they're paid for online, instead of having to come when our office can stamp the receipt. And also the lifetime learning fall session is going to start, and those have been encouraged to pay online. In fact, the first one that came was an online payment, but we are taking those over the counter. We're trying to ease people into this, but we would also like to get it manageable, because nobody wants to see the hours and the staff grow to the extent that we have to increase town budgets to cover this and so forth. So I thought a picture was worth 1,000 words. Those are the over-the-counter pond sticker applications. And this little white pile here is the online, but they're about evenly split. So it takes a lot less when it comes online. And these are our other over-the-counter and online swim lessons, farm pond. They are done on a spreadsheet, and I was waiting for us to go through a cycle to see what the best way was to handle them. because when I picked other collectors' brains, this is basically what they did. So I sat down with the auditors yesterday, and they just thought what I was doing was great. And I said, you mean there isn't a magic pill where we can make this easier with some kind of easy computer system or something? And he said, really, most everybody does it on a spreadsheet. So I guess we're kind of locked into some of that. But I would like to encourage where there is the opportunity, not everything can be paid online yet, but where there is the opportunity, people go to the town website, right in the middle is the online payment center. Click on that, and it'll give you the option of what department you want to go to pay them. And if anybody would like to give it a try but is a little uncomfortable, come into our office. We're happy to sit down and walk through the process with them. So I also have a little award tonight, because in going through my books, I found that one of the selectmen has very nicely plugged into our system, and not only did that selectman do pond permits and that kind of thing, but did more than one burn permit online. And so I have a prize for Sean Colleen, who is the selectman who has used the online process the most. And I want to assure him that this did not cost the taxpayers any money. So there's your first place prize.
Let the record reflect that Sean is blushing, so.
So I appreciate it, and I would hope that you will encourage and support the process, although I know it doesn't please everybody the way things are done, but it is working and it's growing, and I need your support.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy.
I
That's
have a
great.
question. I know normally we don't do this in public comment, but something you just said, building permits,
Building
Online?
permits will be able to be paid online because the
when
building...
would that be?
When?
Yeah,
Right now,
they are.
yes.
Okay.
But you have to wait until the building inspector sends you an email saying your permit is ready to pick up, and this is how much you pay when you pick up or online. And you'll get a receipt if you pay
This-
online.
Yeah, the problem with that is outside of your normal building permit that you would expect to take some time, there's other permits that,
And
there's gas permits, someone might very well walk in and say, I just did a gas line, here's my check, can I get an inspection? And there's a routine day, whatever day it is, the inspector, they
Well-
kind of know the system, so that's going to put a,
Well,
right in the middle of the system.
there is going to have to be an education process. Henry is trying to get the money out of the process. And so he will break down on his email what is owed for the things that go with the building thing, whether it's a Board of Health or it's gas or it's plumbing or electrical, so that they will have a total amount that has to be paid, and it can be broken down when it comes to my office, because I have to keep those separate in my book. But he doesn't want any money turned in when a permit is requested for a building permit, and he wants to determine how much should be paid before the people write the check or before they pay online. So, and I'm letting him run the show the way he wanted. I only care about getting the money and getting it accounted for.
right.
So we've worked with him, and he set up a template, and he will be emailing contractors when they send in an application to him. Okay. And if you have issues, I would think that you would talk to Henry early, so that part of the education process can be...
I suspect he gets what and I see Jeannie in the back, and she knows exactly what I'm talking about. I would expect, because some of it's just a everyday routine. I give you the check, I get the permit. It's not.
I don't think he's doing the electrical, I don't think he's doing the things that he's not issuing this way right now. I think those are the same way that they've been right along. But the building permits that he has to issue a
Okay.
permit for is this way.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is recognition of some of the town's longtime volunteers, and I can see many of them sitting out here. waiting for the recognition. This is a initiative that Paul Durensis suggested and that the board adopted with enthusiasm. And I think since it was your idea, Paul, if you want to sort of start us off, that would be great.
Well, we're here to celebrate you and to honor and give recognition to all of you who have given so much of your time over so many years, and to say thank you. So that's what this is about. We know the paychecks that you've received have been zero or de minimis. We know the work has been hard. We know that municipal projects sometimes takes years to come to fruition. But you've stuck with us. You've stuck with the town. You've stuck with the people of the town. And for that we are very grateful. We have 10 that we have on the agenda, but isn't there an 11th?
This sheet right here.
Yeah, I think there's 12. I think there's 12 altogether, Paul. Here's a list,
Okay.
and one of them we're not doing tonight. So
Right, but the agenda listed only 10. So
yes, that's true.
let me say a word about each one, and perhaps we could call each one up separately, give them a little certificate we have here until they're all done, and then maybe give everybody a round of applause at the end. So we have these in alphabetical order, so we start with Doug Brody. That's the advantage of being B. Letter B. 32 years of service to the town. Land Valuation Committee, Master Plan Study Committee, Fire Department, Board of Appeals, Elderly and Disabled Taxation Committee, Council on Aging, Medical Reserve Corps Executive Committee, Veterans Agent, Veterans Burial Agent, Veterans Grave Officer, and member of the Veterans Day Remembrance Committee. Doug Brody, come forward, please. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Jim Campbell. 31 years of service to the town on the following boards and committees: Town Land Management Committee, Advisory Committee, Cable TV Advisory Committee, Capital Budget Committee, Land Acquisition Committee, Communication Committee, Fence Viewer, Public Safety Committee, Selectmen, where you and I served on the same board, Highway Garage Building Committee, Public Safety Communications Committee. Jim Campbell, thank you. Certificate of appreciation. Thanks, Jim. Roger Demler is not here, but he is to be recognized. 30 years of service to the town. 30 years of service to the town. On the following boards and committees: Traffic Safety Committee, Underground Water Storage Committee, Water Commissioner, Board of Appeals, Energy Committee, Town Center Water Systems Option Committee, Library Building Committee. For Roger Demler, we have the certificate of appreciation. We know he's watching from home. Give it to Diane. Charles Dowse. Is Charles Dowse here? 40 years of service to the town. on the Sherborn Fire and Rescue Department. All I can say is, wow, 40 years. Here's a certificate of appreciation. Fran Heffron, who's not here either. 33 years of service to the town on the following boards and committees: Sherborn Fire and Rescue, Oil Burner Inspector, Right to Know Municipal Law Coordinator, Communications Committee, Local Emergency Planning Committee, Highway Garage Building Committee. Fran Heffron, thank you. Frank Jenkins, who is here, 39 years of service to the town on the following boards and committees: Laurel Farm Study Committee, Master Plan Study Committee, Advisory Committee, Computer Study Committee, Elder Housing Committee, Focus 3 Group, Elderly Housing Revenue Allocation Study, GIS Study Committee, Land Acquisition Committee, Fire Chief Search Committee, Sherborn Housing Partnership, Reuse Committee for 23 Washington Street, and another Fire Chief Search Committee. Frank Jenkins, thank you.
I'd like to,
Wait, Frank, turn around. Frank, look at me.
just one moment.
Sure.
This is great. Thank you, Paul, very much. You're missing a lot of people who serve in town. We all appreciate it very much.
We're going to do this every month. We're going to pick them all
But
up.
I'd like to introduce two new members of your town, here. Hayden, raise your hand. Isabel, raise your hand. Our grandchildren just moved into town this summer. And they had their first day of school. And this is their first meeting in which they're going to be volunteering.
Excellent.
Betsy Johnson, 32 years of service to the town on the following boards or committees: Zoning Bylaw Study Committee, Historical Commission, Bicentennial Constitution Committee, 325th and Millennium Celebration, and most importantly, our town historian. Betsy Johnson. Robert Johnson, 36 years of service to the town on the following boards or committees: Sherborn Fire and Rescue, MAP Study Committee, Historic District Study Committee, Review Length of Term of Certain Town Offices Committee, Designer Selection Committee, Dry Hydrant Action Committee, Fire Station Building Committee, 1858 Townhouse Study Committee, and the Board of Appeals. Robert Johnson, thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
David Colleen in the back there, 32 years of service to the town. Highway Garage Building Committee, Historic District Commission, Forest Management Study Committee, Town Forest Committee, Price Woodlands Water Testing Committee, Wildlife Management Committee, Pine Hill Secondary Access Road Committee, and Sherborn Fire and Rescue Department. David Green. Next is Grace Shepherd. I don't see Grace here. Nevertheless, we'll give it to Diane to deliver. 37 years of service to the town on the following boards and committees: Historical Commission, Local Arts Council, Cable TV Advisory Committee, Historic District Commission, Selectmen, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Hydrological Survey Implementation Committee, Joint Purchase Group Health Insurance Committee, Southwest Area Planning Committee, West Suburban Health Group, Focus 2 Group, Town Administrator Search Committee, Bay Circuit Implementation Committee, Groundwater Protection Bylaw Committee, Southwest Advisory Water Protection Committee, Groundwater Oversight Committee, 1858 Townhouse Study Committee, Board of Appeals, Town Office Renovation Committee, Advisory Committee, Personnel Board, Planning Board, Town Center Water Systems Option Committee, and MBTA Advisory Board. Thank you, Grace Shepherd. Robert Delaney. I saw him.
Bob's here.
There he is. Robert Delaney, 25-plus years of service to the town on the following boards and committees: School Building Planning Committee, Sherborn School Committee, Solon Academy Trustees, Focus 1 Group, Housing Partnership Committee, Land Management Committee, 1858 Townhouse Study Committee, Open Space and Recreation Plan Implementation Committee, Personnel Board, Sherborn Housing Partnership, Town Beautification Committee. I don't see it on here, but he was a
Board
selectman.
of Selectmen, too.
I had the honor of serving with Bob on a board. Bob Delaney, please come forward.
I was on the school committee in the late 1960s.
Yeah, so it's a lot more years than 25. I think somebody stopped counting. They ran out of fingers, Bob. They ran out of fingers and toes. Thank you, Bob.
George-
After Sal's gonna come tonight, so we're gonna save her for September.
And George Fisk.
You can give him to his tonight, I'll give it to him.
George Fisk.
You know what? I think I just gave Bob George Fisk's certificate. So.
I'm flattered.
Here you go.
You're both honored by that.
You can have it.
George Fisk, 40-plus years of service to the town, including a Town Forest Committee, Conservation Commission, Capital Budget Committee, Middlesex County Retirement Study, Retirement Fund, Advisory Committee, 325th and Millennium Celebration Committee, Land Management Committee, Sherborn Housing Partnership, Fire Chief Search Committee, Community Preservation Act Study Committee, Town Beautification Committee, Historic District Committee, Solon Academy Trustees, Agricultural Commission, Board of Assessors,
Town moderator.
and
Town moderator.
Town moderator.
caucus moderator.
Caucus moderator.
Yeah.
And was acting town administrator, or was town administrator at the old library. George, if you're listening, thank you for your service. I wonder if all of you could stand for a moment. We want to give them all a good round of applause.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. Yes, Jim. Sure.
First of all, on behalf of the 10 or 12 of us, we are truly honored. It's nice to see after all these years that to be recognized. And I think many of us weren't aware of all the committees or forgotten some of the committees we were on. And nevertheless, we now have to recognize we're the senior citizens, the old timers, so to speak, and this goes with it. I did want to also say, though, that I think that selectmen might want to consider a policy regarding the death of longtime town employees. I was pleased to see that Paul tonight acknowledged Lucy. I thought that was very nice. I think it's been some weeks since she died, and I was hoping that we could have a more responsive acknowledgement where soon after the person dies, there's something on the website, there's maybe the flag is lowered or something, and it's immediate recognition, and then possibly followed by something similar to Paul's moment of silence at the annual town meeting, where I think many people are here who couldn't be here tonight, and I think it's important for them to recognize the dedication of our employees, especially those who have worked for a long time, and especially those who are town citizens throughout all that time. So that'd be something I hope your board will consider in terms of making sure that these recognitions are more prompt and possibly more extensive. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Jim. Chuck?
I just wanted to add a very brief comment. Maybe our newest town residents can double check my arithmetic here, but when I add up the numbers of years of service, we've got 397 years collectively, and that doesn't even count a number of you I know served on 2 or 3 committees at the same time. That only counted as 1 year. So when you include that, you're probably close to 500 years, which is 5 centuries, half a millennium. And when Libby and I moved to town, we were really inspired by the number of people that volunteer and give to the town. And a lot of them are people on this list. So it's really nice to be in the presence of such service. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, great. Good. That's a nice, happy start to the meeting. The next, we have 2 events that have come before us. The first is the Farm Pond Fishing Derby, and I think we've got Michael Mastrobono here to speak about that. Oh, yeah, it was great, Paul.
It's good to be with you. Really.
You have to ask Rick if he goes on the screen.
Do you want me to put this up on the projector? I think it's better. Just a PowerPoint? I don't need it. But you don't need it? Nah. Well. It's too much of a hassle. It's fine. Go.
Yeah, people at home might like it, Michael. Why don't you sit down and we can get that plugged in, and maybe we can, maybe you can start talking about it. But I would say, I think most of us, all of us here, were here last year when you came in, and it was a new idea, and I don't, you made a great presentation. I don't know if everybody knew whether it would be a success or not, but by the fact that you're back today, it sounds like you had a really good idea and you pulled it off, and now you're back to try again. So thank you. That's a great effort for the town, and sounds like it was a really nice event.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
Is it, we got what we need? Okay, yeah.
But it's missing the teeth marks.
What's that?
That's what makes this.
Okay. I don't know if this is going to work. Maybe he'll keep working on it. You start talking, and maybe it'll catch up.
All right, so the Farm Pond Fish for a Cause, I started it last year with the vision to create a family event on Farm Pond to teach the importance of protecting farm pond water quality, sustainable sports fishing practices such as catch and release, teach good sportsmanship, teach boating and fishing safety, raise money for the Wounded Warriors Project, and have a good time. So last year, the event took place on September 19th. It was a huge success. We raised nearly $750 for the Wounded Warriors Project. More than 25 participants of all ages came, and over 50 fish were actually safely caught and released. Really pretty surprising for like late September at the time. I thought it was really cool. And then once we left and the event was concluded, Farm Pond was left like it was before. No trash, everything was cleaned up. Yeah, so for this year, very similar schedule of events. I proposed a date to Saturday, September 24th, and it will run from 3 to 8 p.m. So I plan on like at 3 o'clock, participants will arrive. At 3:30, we'll have a presentation on boating and washing techniques and the tournament rules. At 4 o'clock, we'll wash and inspect all boats and like carry them to the launch area because I know like the washing station is up top, so we'll have to bring them down after. At 4:30, the tournament will start. We'll fish until 7 o'clock. 7:15, we'll have an award ceremony. 7:30, the event ends, and people will start the departure, and then everyone will be out of Farm Pond by 8 as standard policy. So my request to the town of Sherborn is approval for the use of Farm Pond Reservation for the second annual Farm Pond Fish for a Cause, and the proposed date and time is Saturday, September 24th from 3 to 8 p.m.
That's great, thank you. Does anybody up here have any questions or comments?
Well, I'd have a compliment that you're a Dover High School junior, and you've accomplished quite a lot
Thank
for a junior in our high school. I know that the high school is one of the best in the nation, and I can see the product. But I'm quite impressed that you were able to put this together, that you were able to have it successfully last year, that this is your second year at doing this. It is a benefit to the community. It's a benefit to the Wounded Warriors organization. I'm all in favor of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you very much.
It's great. Anybody else have anything to ask or say?
What was the winning fish?
It was a 2.5-pound largemouth bass caught by actually a Farm Pond resident, Ava Kaplan. She's going into 8th grade. Girl, yeah.
That's great.
Great.
Yeah.
Good, well,
Can I move
thanks for doing
approval?
that. Please do. Please move approval.
Move approval.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor? All right, great, good luck with
Thank you
that.
very much.
Thanks, let us know how it goes.
I will.
All right, next we have, who's here for the boosters, David?
I'll have to ask Jeannie because I thought she told me somebody else was coming. Oh, you're here.
Oh, great, okay, good. You want to jump up there and just explain to us what's going on?
Sure.
It's the one member of the audience that looks like a triathlete.
My name is Chris Robbins, and I'm a Sherborn resident and have been the guy behind the scenes for the last several years orchestrating the triathlon as the race director, and I'm actually in the process of co-chairing the Boosters Committee with Bill Scatcherd. Ultimately, it will be me taking over as his kids are stepping out of the school next year. So in addition to the triathlon, among other responsibilities with the Boosters, but I am here just to say hello and introduce myself. I know that Jim Burns has been a longtime focal point on the lifeguard piece of this triathlon for the last several years. And Ted Raycroft over here is assuming Jim's role as well, so we figured we'd both just be here to introduce ourselves and obviously answer any questions regarding the race, but status quo, nothing's changed. We're expecting about 250 again this year. The race is scheduled for Sunday, September 18th.
Yeah, do a little advertising. So where do people sign up in order to participate?
Oh, I appreciate that. They can go to www.dsboosterstriathlon.com and they can register at any time, all the way up until the day of, if they so choose. The live registration takes place on Saturday afternoon between 3 and 5 at the high school. And the race this is our 12th year. It's really been a remarkable event in that it's sort of a mini barn raising, if you will. There's about 600 or 700 volunteers that come out, parents and kids and student athletes. Obviously the Boosters is committed to all the high school athletic program, and this is our largest fundraiser. And we receive racers from all over Metro West and the Boston area, elite racers all the way down to first timers. It's a pretty low-key race, just a quarter-mile swim, 15-mile bike, and a 3-mile run, and everything finishes up at the high school on the track, Olympic style, and we put on a big breakfast buffet for everybody afterwards, which is always a big hit. And yeah, we'd love to have anybody register. You can certainly put together a team if you're not a triathlete, if you don't swim or bike, but you can run. We certainly encourage people to put 3 people together and come on down.
Can I move approval with the conditions that we have a process that this goes to our different department heads, and they have some conditions which I hope have been reviewed with them, so I won't catch them by surprise.
They know what they are. They're the same every year. And they're the ones who contact the police and fire. And they know not to put paint on the road.
Yes, so we have approval with the following conditions from Seaman D. No street markings of any kind. All markings must be temporary posted signs and not attached to trees on town or town signage. We have 2 police details at 2 intersections. South Main and Farm, and South Main and Goulding. So that's my motion.
Second.
Yeah, I'd like to amend the motion to add not a police detail, but just a request that you have somebody stationed at the intersection of Forest and Farm. And the reason for that is, I think it was 2 years ago I was there. That was an uncontrolled intersection, and the bikes are going 30, 40 miles an hour down that hill. And I stopped. I was watching somebody in the race, but I stopped and stayed there for about a half an hour because that was a disaster waiting to happen. I think somehow the volunteer who was supposed to be there maybe didn't show up, or it was missed somehow, but just request that you make sure somebody's there throughout the biking.
Forest and Farm.
Race. Yeah, exactly. You know the downhill before the bridge.
Got it. Yes, okay, yep.
All right.
So we'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Great, thanks. All in favor? Thank you, great.
Thank you very much.
Luck.
Appreciate it.
You can get the Dutch biker to stand there at that intersection.
What's that?
You can get the Dutch biker to stand at that intersection.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have our treasurer, Heather Peck, to talk with us about internal borrowing.
Normally, I'm coming to you asking you to approve borrowings that are going to cost us money. In this particular instance, I'm asking for the approval of an internal borrowing. And the reason we're able to do this year is because we actually have the library gift proceeds sitting, waiting to be spent, and they are not being spent quite yet. There's a little bit of a leeway. I would never do this for a borrowing that was for a band, but for a state aid anticipation grant, I think it makes sense because those monies will be coming back from the state usually in a 3 to 6 month period of time, and I am 99% sure we will not be expending $2.4 million of the library gift money in that time frame. So this is a request for $471,000. This is a requirement by the state that I actually have the board approve this internal borrowing, and you can see that I have to forward it off to the Department of Local Services Public Finance section. I did quantify the savings. If we had gone out for borrowing, I had our investment advisor give me a current rate of 0.85% for basically, sorry, I'm trying to remember the term that she gave that to me for a year. We typically go out for a year. And so that would cost us $4,003.50. Currently, in the highest earning money market fund that I have right now is 0.70. That would cost us, that would be an earnings of $3,297 of those same proceeds sitting in the money market fund waiting to be expended. So that's a savings of approximately $706.50. I just think it makes sense. We're in a unique position right now to save these funds. I've been not aggressive, but I've been very active in investing our cash over the last year. The consultant actually told me last week that I've earned $43,000 in investment income over the last year compared to the prior 2 years of $9,000. I've looked at CDs. We've had 6-month CDs. We have a year CD. We have money actually in a community bond for the Seekonk Community Center, and been really actively putting these monies into investment accounts. I think this is the right way to spend this money right now, especially knowing that it will be coming back from the state.
Great. So just to simplify it, to understand it, we would be borrowing from funds that we have on hand in anticipation of a state grant to repay.
Correct.
And we can repay those funds.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do track the library money separately. I know I look at we've expended a fair amount, interestingly enough, probably about $500,000 now of the monies that came in. But the state grant was $700,000 last October, and the gift was $2.4 million. So we're sitting on some funds right now that I think
Which are not earning any interest.
Oh, most definitely. They're in that point. We have one in a 1-year CD at Century Bank for 1%, and the monies are in this money market fund at 0.7 because we've been waiting for the ground to break.
Great.
Well, can I move approval? We've done this many times, at least I've been around on the board for a while. We've done this many times in the past. It's always worked. It's been safe. It saves us money for all the reasons that our treasurer has articulated. This is a no-brainer.
Thank you, Paul.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Discussion.
This might be this item or the next item, but I don't understand why we didn't do this 6 months ago.
That's not me, that's Ed, right?
We voted on it. And town meeting approved borrowing in anticipation. We talk about it every year, but we never actually anticipate it very much. I don't understand why. Paving season's almost over. We're going to get it in. I know we're going to get it in, but I get calls almost every day with people laughing at me about all the other towns that get it done.
I think the
I know
issue.
there's reasons why other towns are able to do it, but why do we vote every year to borrow in anticipation, and we didn't really anticipate this one very well?
I think we have to talk to Ed about the timing of and the process for submitting like the Chapter 90 documentation. The only issue with the treasurer is she can't really borrow or internal borrow or anything until we receive those pages back signed by Chapter 90 that they've been approved.
That's correct.
So,
And Ed can't start the job until I have the borrowing approved. So it's a multi-step process. And Jeannie's not here anymore, but she actively pursued, once the project was identified, getting the state project request approval signed.
So what other towns do is they appropriate a larger amount each year that's used as a reserve, that they continue revolving these projects through and paying out a reserve while they're waiting for approvals. And just it's more difficult on a smaller town when you're not setting aside $300,000 or $400,000 for that specific purpose. But Ed can comment more on that.
I wonder if between capital budget and our treasurer and our advisory committee, we can figure out a way to do it next year so we are more like towns like Dover or Wellesley or any of the other surrounding towns, all of which have completed projects in the summer, which is really the best time to do those road projects, as everybody knows. Yeah, this is kind of the transition, Ed. Thank you. Come on up.
I do need a vote, approval, and signatures.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't leave.
Yeah, there's a motion pending. We had discussion. We're still having discussion. Anything more on Heather's item? Okay. Has it been seconded?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay, so all in favor? All right, great. Thank you. And we have to sign something.
Yes.
Thank you.
I had sent an email earlier to David, kind of describing Wellesley and Dover were brought up. Wellesley has a water and sewer enterprise fund in which they dip into for a lot of their paving projects. So anytime they redo a water sewer drain line, it almost always includes a road paving line item, so those funds are already there. I did speak with the director over in Dover, and he informed me they keep $500,000 in Chapter 90 in the kitty, if you will. And each year they have another 300 plus that is added to their budget as a supplemental, so on top of the Chapter 90. So they have the 500 that are already available in Chapter 90 funds, and then they have a supplemental $300,000 plus line item. So they're better able, once July 1 comes, they have a minimum of $800,000 available at all times for paving.
Okay.
The financial idea behind that is if the Chapter 90 funding doesn't come through, there's not a risk because they have their own funds available to cover the cost. So they don't have to worry about whether the Chapter 90 gets approved or not.
It's covered.
Well, Chapter 90 has been approved every year for decades.
The individual, I'm talking about the individual projects, not the Chapter 90
okay.
funding at the state level.
And what's the success rate of those approvals?
I don't know which projects have not been approved. I think it's just the length of time.
As long as it's a road paving, it's within the Chapter 90 guidelines, which we do 100% of the time, it's always approved.
Well, I'm talking about because from my understanding, it sounds like Wellesley and Dover are doing it on the come.
Wellesley's doing it a different way, though. It sounds like Wellesley has figured out a way to turn water and sewer money into road paving projects.
But then, are 100% of those projects then approved? Do you know that?
They would submit enough, say they were approved for 500,000 Chapter 90, they would submit enough applications to total beyond that 500. And then they would float it on their own reserve, and when as those projects get approved and the funding gets approved, then they will borrow or whatever else they have to do. The timing
In the case of Dover, if, say, for argument's sake, they're going to do a $700,000 project, they have 500 in available Chapter 90, then on their application, they indicate that they have an extra 200 that's available in the budget. So therefore, the Chapter 90 request gets approved. Does that help?
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out that in a typical year, our summer months are when the cash balance is at its lowest.
Yeah.
So
now, I'm sorry, I should have stayed.
So you don't even have the luxury
I don't.
of floating internally, even if, this year we're lucky.
We are, and
Yeah,
we
we
would
have
have
that
actually
balance,
been in an even more tight situation because there was a significant number of capital projects that were approved as uses from general revenues or free cash, more so than in previous years. Last year, we had our fire truck on order, and I was able to borrow on the fire truck in September and sort of get us through the cash flow. This year, I would not have had any capital projects to borrow on. I most likely would have had to either ask people not to expend their funds, which I don't really have a right to do, nor do any of us. After it's approved at town meeting, it can be purchased or expended, or potentially done a revenue anticipation note. The library funds sitting there gave us a little bit of flexibility. Last year, we would have gone down to approximately $250,000 of available cash at the end of August. And this year, I run my cash flow cycle, taking out the residual money from the library gift of about $2.8 million, and I would be down at about $250,000 in available cash. That's not a comfortable position for me to be in, quite frankly.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know how much like a biweekly payroll
Yes.
would be?
Give me 2 seconds.
That you transferred?
It's been about $288,000 during the summer months.
Right. So
I think it will jump next month, the next pay period, because all the teachers are back, up to about 300 and something, 330 maybe.
So if that's your cash balance that you have on hand, and you're paying out that every 2 weeks.
And we have the regional assessment of $721,000 a month. We have a lot of outflows.
And as of July 1, you have Middlesex retirement insurance.
July 1 is
paid lump
$800,000,
sum.
and we save 2% by paying them lump sum in July versus...
And the same with insurance, there's a 2% discount.
So this is an unhealthy situation above and beyond just the highway projects. I mean,
I often say one of the lessons that I'm trying to learn as treasurer, and I am relatively new at this, is how we can say we have free cash of $1.something million, and I go down to $250,000 every July and August. That's something I'm trying to figure out myself. I've asked all of our accountants that question. I ask people every time I go to school, and I can't seem to get an answer that makes me happy related to that. Yeah, it is a problem. And it's not a frequency of tax collection problem. I mean, if you think about it, you're collecting even less if you go to quarterly, so you have even less available to spend. At least we're sort of sitting on our funds for 6 months at a time, and I have the ability to do some investing of that. So it's a cash flow issue every time you get to the end of a tax collection period, whether you're quarterly or semi-annually.
Maybe we can spend some time with Suzanne just to see what that you already have.
I have asked Suzanne that question. I have asked everyone I can possibly ask that question. So yes, it's a habitual, historical, however you want to, it's an issue.
For the issue of, for roads, if town meeting was to approve, say, $250,000 for roads, we would most likely go out and spend it because we're already underfunding what the priority list for roads is.
But we had Chapter 90 money carried over, didn't we?
Yeah, we had some.
So we had that
carried
money,
over.
we didn't spend it, we
Right.
held it
There's
to
a
do a
balance
bigger
in that.
project, right?
Right. There's a balance in that.
Yeah, we had approximately $140,000 that was held over, and the reason I held that over was anticipation of Washington or Coolidge coming up and needing the extra funds. We only received $255,000 from Chapter 90 this year.
Sure.
But we can,
But on Washington Street, there is a earmark for $35,000 for improvements on Route 16 that should be folded into this project.
In the budget, in this year's budget.
In the budget.
In this year's
In the state budget,
Oh, okay, sorry.
there's an additional $35,000.
Not the town budget.
No,
No.
the state
Has
approved budget.
appropriated $35,000 for Route 16 in Sherborn in order to contribute towards this repaving project,
The big question is, when is that earmark released?
as soon as you ask for it.
yeah, the earmarks would function like a grant, and after the invoice is done, we submit it to the state, and then they
Okay.
wire you the money, and then we lose it. I don't mean lose it, I mean we have to track it in, because they wire money in all the...
Well, I had a,
Postage receipts in the proper account.
Right,
Because
right.
this project's going to be tapping us in the Chapter 90, so that'll be great. We'll have an extra 35 in.
yeah, I had asked them to pay for the whole thing
Carryover.
on the grounds that most of the use of the road was people passing through and not Sherbornites, but we got 35 out of, if you ask for 400, you get 35. If you ask for nothing, you get nothing.
So, Ed, you want to go through, I know, it looks like we've got 2 projects that you're anticipating.
Yeah, I'm anticipating the
Thanks, Ed.
Washington paving project.
I think so.
We're now moved to the end of this month, beginning of October, to get that accomplished. We're looking at doing the project at night, so it'll be minimal traffic issues, and there'll be no issues with school buses. The other project that we're still working on is Woodland and Goulding, trying to get the pole relocated.
Right.
Who did the paving on Maple Street?
That was Aggregate.
And did they bid on this project, or?
This project, this year, they were outbid by Lynch. Lynch will be doing the work.
The Aggregate did a great job on
They
Maple
did a
Street.
fabulous job.
Yeah.
So, Ed, with this night work, is it going to disturb the residents who live nearby?
Yeah, only if they sleep at night.
Only if they sleep at night. Okay.
Grinders are loud.
That's what I was wondering.
Who in Sherborn sleeps at night?
Well, I think we're going to get some complaints about grinding the road
We are.
at night.
For availability,
Okay.
and it also ensure that we are getting the best price.
But the state also contributed here because they didn't release the funds. They were supposed to have been released July 1, and they didn't release them until August 1. So there was a
That hurt.
critical delay at the state level on this.
So you'll forward the calls from the residents to the governor's office? Is that?
He's going to forward them to Deval Patrick.
Well, is it a foregone conclusion that we have to do this at night? I mean,
No.
other towns do it, they have detours, and why can we explore doing it during the day?
I think traffic will be backed up to Milford.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with
Do
that.
you?
I agree
Traffic's
with
going to
that.
be an issue.
I would
It'll be a solid line of cars down
prioritize
Woodland
our
Street.
residents over Milford's residents.
Well, but
But their
the people on Woodland Street will disagree, because it'll be sitting still all the way out to South Main Street.
but their
Yeah,
kids
this
that need to
this
get
was
to
also
school.
the,
Their kids who have to get to school, whether it's Pine Hill or the region, they got to get to school, and we have school buses. And if they're stuck in traffic, and they don't get to the school, that's to be avoided even more than all these issues
Right,
of
but
noise.
I don't know how much in depth we've actually looked at planning that out and seeing if it could be done, or if we're just sort of saying, it's a lot easier to do it at night, let's just do it at night.
back in July, prior to every project, I sit down with Lieutenant Bento, and we develop a traffic plan and how we're going to tackle it, what we need for police details, the detours and such. And this project here, he highly suggested doing it at night. We did do the North Main Street project during the day, and we did have major traffic issues. You were caught in that day. And in order to try and avoid this, we're looking at the night.
And so, Ed, what are the hours of that? Is that like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.? Or
We're
what's
looking at doing from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m.
Is there an option to move it forward so it's like 6 to 2 or something? So there's at least part of the night where there aren't backup alarms going and grinding machines
We
going?
typically don't get through our rush hour here until 6-ish, 7-ish. So by the time you get the setup and all that, I can certainly modify it or make the recommendation.
Well, I just wonder if even if you start at 6, there might be a little bit of a backup, but it wouldn't be the same as doing it during the daytime. I'm sympathetic in advance to the people who are going to hear those truck backup noises, which are so loud. They're not necessarily going to have air conditioning on because it's late September rather than the middle of the summer, so the windows might be open. I just think we're setting up for, and I realize people, construction happens, but I think we're setting up for people to be pretty uncomfortable for a couple of days on a street with a lot of residents.
There is, and you got the pros and cons on both, and that's what you're weighing is the major traffic backups versus the inconvenience, and it is an inconvenience, and I don't want to downplay that. The other option we have is to hold off on this. The money's already in the kitty, and pick this right up in the beginning of paving season.
I don't hear that, but I don't
No
think
chance.
anybody's saying that, yeah.
I think if that road sees a bad winter, it's going to just crumble apart.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Thank you. I guess it's good we had the practice closing the street last year, so we know what the reactions will be.
Goes over well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, next on the agenda is,
Consideration of Housing Partnership Mission Statement.
oh, yeah.
Addie Mae Weiss, Chair.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. So yes, the Housing Partnership Committee has met twice, the first time unofficially since we were not all officially sworn in. And our first order of business was to streamline our mission statement down to being to increase the supply of affordable housing in Sherborn while preserving the semi-rural character of the town. A priority is to provide the state-mandated 10% affordable housing stock with sustainable overall housing growth.
I have two edits.
I'm sorry?
I have two edits.
I bet one or both is the same as mine. Go ahead.
The first is, I'd like to strike the word semi-rural,
That was one.
so just preserve the character of the town. Some who would say that we're rural, some would say we're semi-rural, some would say we're semi.
Or suburban, or...
And the other change would be, in the second sentence where it says a priority is to provide the state mandate, I would say a priority is to work towards the state mandated 10%. It's not really the function of any committee to single-handedly solve a problem, but rather to bring it to the Board of Selectmen and maybe to the Planning Board and maybe to town meeting. This is a group effort. It's one that we're all in it together as a team.
Right, absolutely. And I think our goal was to have a mission statement that was general enough that to kind of serve that point. And then, obviously, then the kind of action items that we are focusing on is separate of the more broad mission statement. Kind of as far as your changes suggested, I have no objections to those changes. They make a lot of sense.
The second reason to have the work to provide is that there are interim steps that can be met before you hit the 10%. If you add, I think it's 2% a year, there's provisions in 40B, so it's not an absolute 10% cutoff, so I think that language makes sense, Paul.
Right.
Yeah, I also like those changes, and I would just, I always remember something Gino Carlucci said when I was on the planning board when we were talking about whether to describe something as having rural character, semi-rural character. And, you know, he said you can ask a lot of people what rural means, and some of the answers you're going to get in terms of what the environment looks like in a rural area are not the kind of answers you think people in Sherborn might want to see. And so he always advised, I think, staying away from specifically characterizing the town as rural or semi-rural.
Right.
For that
I'll
reason.
admit it's a phrase thrown around a lot, so it gets kind of easy to say it's been written up in past.
Even though we have a lot of
Options.
we have a lot of rural characteristics, and we
Yeah.
try to be close to our farming roots and everything else.
Could you talk to the phrase "with sustainable overall housing growth"?
I think as far as the committee, there's kind of multiple things happening at once right now. There's the realities of what's happening in town, and then there's kind of the impetus for the revival of the group was the understanding that if we had a plan towards how we would achieve affordable housing in our town, we might have some more control. Right now we have really no say. And so the sustainable means a sense of maybe rather than a plan that's forced on the town, but maybe a plan that is in more involved. The town's a partnership with whatever that plan is. It could be a local initiative project, a friendly 40B. There's a lot of, as we go through writing, the work of writing a housing production plan, there's 10 or so different ways to ultimately get there, but the idea of being sustainable, being a thoughtful way of getting there, there's the things that are out there already, they are going to run their course. We have no influence on those items. It's thinking about towards the future as a town, how would we envision adding units, because the reality is if we are going to be serious about writing a housing production plan and having a plan that is functioning and has any weight or merit, the town has to be working towards adding units of affordable housing, subsidized housing inventory units each year. So
And I saw from your minutes, your calculation is that's about 32 units a year?
it depends. It depends on varying. I think so. If you have a certified housing production plan, then you're looking at, maybe 7 units a year. Whereas if you have, right now, there's the 2% that a town. There's so many different degrees, so it's not an absolute understanding, but there's not a lot of actual certified housing production plans out there to look at for other towns. There's a lot of approved housing production plans. A town that writes a plan and says this is how we're going to get there, how we think we want to get there. State approves it, but to get it actually certified, you actually have to act on it, and that's going to be the harder stage. So that's going to take more time. But the town, that ability to utilize your housing production plan to potentially deny a 40B project down the road, that only happens if you have a certified housing production plan. So it's something that's been worked on in the past by the past housing partnership committee, and just talking with Medfield, they've been struggling with getting a plan. It's not as straightforward as it sounded at first, so we're learning a lot.
Yeah, I thought Gino told the planning board a couple of years ago that there was only 1 or possibly 2 certified production plans in the state, that there are a number of plans, but only 1 or 2 had been certified. Now, that's a little bit dated because that was 2 or 3 years ago. But
I think right now there's only 1.
yeah, that's my understanding. It's down to 1.
Sorry.
So I would think when you say sustainable, it's a broader concept in terms of growth that the town can sustain, in terms of the school system, in terms of the roads, in terms of the financial structure, in terms of the environment, in terms of water supply and sewer ability to sewer the site and so forth. So it would look into site selection, it would look into other things, and so related to, and sometimes sustainable also means that the projects are lead type projects where they're environmentally sustainable, internally walkable and things like that, and that kind of transitions to the question I've probably asked you the last time you were in here, which is how close is the planning board to having a comprehensive plan or a master plan that we can see and vote on. And because in terms of defensibility for the town of wanting housing to go at a certain place or not go to a certain place or grow at a certain rate, we need a plan. We have to have a plan. And I know the planning board's been working hard on it, and there have been all these committees, but it has to surface at some point, and I don't know how you can do a housing production plan in a vacuum, or how we can set policy to the extent we set policy up here in a vacuum without a plan.
Right. So I guess to that note, the planning board has been working. They've had their committees over the last year divided into open space and then built environment, and we're in the editing stage of the general plan. It is recent that we are trying to beef up the housing portion of that plan. So to that end, several of my fellow Housing Partnership Committee members have also been attending the planning board meetings when we are having those discussions to try and, so that we are not operating in a vacuum, because there is no way to possibly function and make any headway if we don't. The goal being that there will be a general plan to be brought to vote at town meeting next spring.
Good. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you're at least keeping in touch with them, and it sounds like more than keeping in touch with them on, I mean, I know you're on that committee also, so it's easier for you, but that your housing committee as a whole is keeping in touch with the planning board, just thinking on that.
If I could, there's 3 former planning board members on the Board of Selectmen here, Mike, myself, and Chuck. And over the course of the years as I've followed the planning board, there's been one critical issue that seems to have changed a few times, and that is, where do we want to put housing, denser housing? And when I was on the board, the idea and the general plan reflected the notion that we wanted to put it in the business area or close to the business area, so that it would be walkability, there would be connectivity between shops and vendors who are selling things and people who could be their customers. We wanted to reduce dependence on automobiles. Lately, I've been hearing the opposite is true, that we want to disperse these projects not in one location, but kind of spread them around the town and kind of hide them in different places so that they're dispersed as a deliberate strategy of where to go. So you have like those 2 extremes, and I've heard all kinds of things in between. Where is the planning board now on that kind of central issue?
Well, based on so there's kind of exactly what you're saying. There is no one straight answer. There's the thought that was brought by the MAPC group that at the June 8th meeting, where there's a focus on denser development in your town centers. And obviously in our town right now, as things are, there isn't really a way to feasibly do a lot of that because of the sewer, I mean, not the sewer, but sorry, septic and individual private water system. The feedback we've so far heard a lot of is people like mixed residential, commercial type. If we were to do rental units, they like the idea of having shopping and apartments together, and the ideal, if there was feasibility for water and septic, would be in our downtowns where there's walkability. So that's a thought. But there's more than one way to attain affordable housing, and part of the plan will be listing these multiple ways, and there's a lot of different ideas that are explored, such as subdivisions that are cluster developments that have the open space, and that will require some looking at how can you do a cluster development with our current septic regulations. But it doesn't have to be only one way. It could be duplexes. There's certainly thoughts of doing a habitat project, and that could be that might not necessarily be a downtown project. That might be something more integrated with our current settings of what we think of as single-family homes. So I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts?
Well, the projects that you get the most bang for the buck are the rental projects, because even if you have 25% affordable, all of the rental units for that project are counted towards your subsidized housing inventory. So there's an incentive to do those in terms of meeting the 10% subsidized, and in terms of meeting any needs that the town has for rental.
Setting the next meeting.
Want this?
An issue with what date, David?
I can't make the 13th,
Okay.
and so I'm hoping that some or all of the interesting issues that I want to be involved with can be heard on like the 14th instead of the 13th.
Okay.
For the actual warrant, right now we have the citizen signature article for the expand the Board of Health from 3 to 5 members. We don't have any sponsor on the change the Board of Health from an elected to an appointed board. So we have that as a placeholder. Create Board of Health Director position in bylaw, that's a placeholder. And then authorize Board of Selectmen to approve safety zones for speeding. And amend general bylaw to authorize fire chief to require third-party review of fire sprinkler plans paid for by the applicant. And then the capital items have been narrowed down to the police department HVAC. We received one estimate in for $153,900, which was significantly higher than what we expected it to be. So now we're going back to them and asking for lower options and what the ramifications are of waiting until next spring if we were to do engineering now and then put it out to bid and actually get the bid numbers in. But we hope that the other system that's not so robust will maybe cut that price in half.
Isn't that how we got into this position in the first place, though? They installed a system that wasn't sized to handle the building, and it's been nothing but trouble ever since then?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why would we do that again?
It's a recurring nightmare.
Well, I mean, why would we go back and do the same
I
thing
don't
again?
recommend it, but I
Okay,
have
good.
to have the options in case they're
Yeah.
asked.
All right.
People
And
will
I'm also
ask.
wondering where the money for this is coming, since we just heard from Heather that things are a little tight these days.
Well, this would be an approved
We're going to float
borrowing.
some payroll.
Yeah, it would be approved what?
I mean, it would be an approved borrowing,
Well,
is
when
what
we
we would
first-
be taking.
How can we do that?
When we first talked about
Special
the
town.
special town meeting, I had asked whether free cash would be certified by then, because we could then use free cash.
Mhm.
And I think you said, or Susan Matthews, whatever her name is,
Suzanne was expecting.
also said that she thought that we had a reasonable shot of getting free cash certified by the state. Are we still on track to be able to get, I mean, if we get like, 1.5 million of free cash that's available to be spent, we can spend it. We don't need to wait for the annual town meeting.
I'm mindful of Heather telling us she can never find that free cash even when we have it, so
I think they even changed the name of it from free cash to,
missing cash.
I think it's undesignated fund balance or float.
Designated fund
that.
balance.
But that, yeah, Suzanne is still trying to hit those marks. Right now, the focus has been the getting the tax commitment together and getting that, and I just forgot the name of it. It's a thing that's submitted to the state database, like through a gateway system, and each department has to report their expenditures and you have
The recap sheet you're talking about?
Well, that's one of the sheets on there. DE1, the debt exclusion sheet is another one. Your recent town meeting article approvals. It all goes into one DOR database. So they're currently loading that information in, and Suzanne has a meeting with DOR scheduled, or it might have been even yesterday. So she's still on track for that.
So if we have free cash available, we have funding sources.
Right. Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we have George from advisory here.
Sorry. To wrap up the books for the last fiscal year so we can start working on guidance as soon as that's done and free cash is certified. So as you said, Paul, I really think with these capital articles, we really have to have free cash certified and know what it is before we can consider spending any of this money.
Yeah, you can't really borrow this without a debt exclusion, and to do a debt exclusion, you have to have a ballot question. We may have a ballot question for some of these change of government forms, so it's not inconceivable that there would be a special election. But that's expensive, and
We wanted to avoid that.
Is it feasible to vote the articles contingent on there being free cash to pay for them? In other words, vote them without a warrant, without a borrowing?
well, I think you
could
gotta
do
either
that.
put them on or take them off.
Understood, but if they're on, can you say, we'll pay for them out of free cash, but we're not going to pay for them any other way?
You can approve it that way. You could approve the article that way with maybe
A comment.
contingent on a vote of the Board of Selectmen authorizing the use of free cash or something.
You could have a comment at the bottom. I mean, right
Getting-
now, if you don't put the article on the warrant, you can't ever put it in again. And
Right.
You have a window. So it has to be on, but we could always ask for no action on the article if there isn't any funding source.
But if we don't have the free cash approved at that time,
That's what I'm
we would
saying.
still want to push for the article. We wouldn't want to have no action on it. We would want them to approve the use of free cash
Can't approve the use of free cash.
without the certified free cash number.
I
Correct.
don't think we would, as advisory, I'm pretty sure we would recommend no action if we didn't have certified free
Yeah,
cash.
because what if it comes in low? You're obligated to spend it.
No, you're not obligated to spend it.
Even though it's sufficient free
No,
cash.
that's why I was putting in the circuit breaker type thing, that it would have to go to another vote of the Board of Selectmen to be.
So it would be, the
Yeah, I
warrant
just
would
think that
be,
sends a message to the voters that we can't get our act together.
But it's just a back, well, it's not, DOR has to certify 350 numbers, so we get in the queue as quickly as possible, and if there's a hiccup, you go to the bottom of the pile. So that's why Suzanne was having them in now to meet with them. We've already had the auditors in.
I guess the thing is, we would not have
Preliminary.
had a special town meeting for those capital items if they were the only thing out there. This is an opportunistic play because we've got a situation, at least with the fire department, that makes sense to get a jump on it because we probably should have done it last year.
but couldn't the warrant article be subject to it being funded from identifying the source, certified free cash?
That was what I asked, but I got like a grimace out of George. He was very distraught about that.
I mean, it's only one member of advisory, but I wouldn't be, I feel like that's too unknown, and I think we really need to have an identified funding source if we're going to be recommending an article.
Well, it either happens or it doesn't. Either we get certified free cash of X amount.
I mean, you could
If we
approve
don't,
it,
we don't fund it.
that it goes forward with,
I think we voted the library project that way, actually.
I thought we did too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
A couple years ago, we voted the $1 million contingent on getting a state grant for X
That's right.
million dollars.
Right.
And there was a lot of discussion about that and a lot of angst on both committees. But we did, once everybody was comfortable with the number, we did end up recommending it. I think you guys were on board too.
Before I was on.
And town meeting voted it, so.
Thank goodness you're only one vote.
Just one other thing on the warrant, just to give you an idea of advisory schedule for this. We want to, we have meetings scheduled for September 14th to September 21st to go through, to kind of review the warrant articles before our public hearing. Hopefully we can get through them all on the 14th, then go to the 21st if we need to. And then our public hearing will be held on Wednesday, October 5th.
do you know what time those are, George?
They'll all be at 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights. They're going to be the typical time of an advisory meeting.
Are you meeting over at PD or here?
We usually meet in that room, but for the public hearing, we'll be here.
Can't meet at the PD, it has no air conditioning.
Oh. Okay. Well, it might get this front then.
Might be snowing by then.
Whatever Jeannie tells
There's no parking here, there's no air conditioning over there. All right.
So I'll add those to this calendar.
And the grinders will be going in.
Grinders will be going, exactly. Okay, good.
Did a nice picture.
Yeah, I know.
So the other capital item was replacing the town hall generator, and we had a written estimate for $63,270. And then there was a placeholder that the library wanted added for a library generator enhancement to cover using the library as a shelter. I don't know if they've talked to advisory about that.
I got an email today regarding, for the first time, and I'm meeting with capital budget to discuss it tomorrow morning, actually. So.
Oh, okay.
So just to get an idea of what's happening, and then maybe go from there.
This is a shelter for what?
Like, it can be a Red Cross shelter. It would be an emergency shelter.
But we have, right now, we have what? Pine Hill School? We have any place else?
No, we don't have Pine Hill School.
We don't?
No, it's not a shelter.
Okay.
It probably could become one, but it didn't. Last time it was looked at, the FEMA model, it didn't fit because it didn't have an access road. Now it does, so that could be looked at again. But I don't think it has a diesel generator. I think it's got a natural gas generator.
When we say a shelter,
It does.
It does not. You can't be on the national gas grid without a backup
Okay.
as your shelter. Which is why this building can't be
Right.
at the moment, which we might fix when we get a new generator.
Okay.
CM&D has a diesel generator, so you can sleep on that floor.
Okay.
The fire station doesn't qualify either.
Just what we need is to sleep under a truck.
Here we go.
Well, no, we'd pull the trucks out and probably sweep the floor.
Maybe.
Heat
All
it.
right. Okay, no, I just was wondering in terms of spending money on something we don't need, but it sounds like maybe we do need it.
yeah, there was
Plenty of reading material anyway.
there was broad support for it.
Okay.
One question I posed to David, and I think you guys have already sort of discussed it, and excuse me if I missed that, but
Access to information and have the same information when they're voting. And that it's not right that some have more information and some have less. And there's also, as I said, some stuff from the Attorney General that discourages appointing authorities for being on selection committees, because the selection committees should be doing vetting and venting's not the right word. Vetting. They may also be venting.
Maybe venting later.
But there was a whole host of reasons. So I don't agree with the legal result, but as I say, you have your lawyer, so you have to go with your lawyer.
Well, what I'd like to do maybe is, the selectmen could appoint the list contingent on review of an opinion from town council, or.
Well, are you uncertain? I mean, you sounded
I'm
pretty
not
certain
uncertain
just now. Okay.
But, maybe council is viewing it differently than Paul's viewing it, so I would like to get him the opinion to review.
I'll just vote no, not because I don't think that the committee would be excellent. It's just that it's not something.
the state deems as demo rebuild and what Sherborn deems as rebuild. The state looks at a piece of property and says there's a house there, whether there's a house there today or not, there was a house. So it was already developed. And the Sherborn regulation considers that house needs to stay there until a new septic system gets hooked up to it. That's a big problem. Over this year and in previous years, there was houses that were falling down that were getting new septic systems hooked up to them. So it's an issue that needs to be looked at.
Be hooked up to a house that's falling
There-
down?
Yeah. There was
Darryl,
one on Farm Road that we all drove by for weeks as it was falling over. They were hooking the new septic system up to it.
Daryl Beardsley, the chair of the Board of Health, was in here earlier, and she came back, and she had asked for a chance to add some comments about it.
Yeah, can you clarify that too, Daryl? That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to come in first. I did plan to come in and speak during the public comment period, but I just could not get out of work quite early enough, so I just about made it. So first I wanted to just briefly go over some issues specific to 237 Washington, to clarify things that have gone on, because I gather there's a fair amount of misinformation out there and accusations that the board was intentionally trying to delay or obstruct demolition of this. So I'll just take just a moment to go through the timeline of what's going on and what the Board of Health was working on relative to this. And then the other issue bring up is just a somewhat different issue. So on June 1st,
we had a variance hearing regarding the property and the proposed septic. Went through the list of variances, things were granted. It included some local upgrade approvals under 310 CMR 15, Title 5. And they were all approved, subject to receipt of just a deed recording and then final plan. Well, we had the final plan. However, shortly after that, new plans were received, and they were different. They included a well, so that was not part of our original review and approval. So they noted the existing well as being decommissioned. When it came before us on June 1st, there was discussion that that was going to remain as the well. And they had a proposed new well location. But when we receive that kind of thing, that changes the plan. It is no longer the approved plan that was before us, where setbacks are reviewed and all the rest for compliance. You don't want it to be too close to the septic, to the street, etc. So we also need confirmation that that was the formal intent of someone, and the way that's done is by someone submitting a new well application. So that those formalities had not been done, and communications began from the staff, who has been working closely with both the administrator and the health agent, have been communicating a lot with the property owners and developers and their agents. So, for example, we have emails that were sent on June 23rd. This is following some phone discussions, just saying, you have a proposed well, we need the application, and a fee associated with that so that the health agent could proceed and review it. I will say that in the interest of keeping things moving along, though, the health agent did review it, just to be ready, because we knew that it was time sensitive, so they were moving ahead. Again, on June 27th, June 23rd, they received a reply that the well application and check had been mailed in. And so there were several follow-up emails on June 27th and July 6th saying, we still haven't received it, just to let the person know that you can't really move ahead without that. And then July 7th, there was further clarification with a letter and details about all the things that needed to be provided that, again, had been communicated verbally a number of times. So in July, there still would have been time, had that been submitted, to have been on the agenda for either the July meeting, and we had 2 meetings in July, or the August meeting, and things could have been finalized. So we really can't go ahead and approve a plan that has been submitted with something new. The property owner was advised that they could take that proposed well off and go back to the plan that had been approved, and then everything would be done and taken care of. So pretty much where that, and then July 19th, again, more information, August 11th. Things were getting reviewed, and then there was another problem with a version of the plan that was submitted where the variances were not included on the plan, which is a requirement, and the engineer who was doing the work has been working for decades in town and knows that when we have variance hearings, they have to go, the variances go on the plan, as that's what was approved, and that's really protection for the property owner, because it says, yes, we approved you to build this with these variances, including, again, state-level variances. So they were just missing, and so that took some time then to receive the plans with the proper information, which had been on the plans that we looked at on June 1st. So somehow they got missed, but that was relayed and shared with them. So it just took time. And then the procedure in town is that it's a checking and system along the way. So before you move to the next step, things have to be in order so that, really, I presume things don't get out of hand, and that's a system that the town has set up between all the boards and committees so that it's stepwise, people walk through it, and before it moves on to the next level, you know that things are appropriate. So that's really what was going on. The information was submitted, so it did eventually all come in. It just took several months to come in. And, frankly, once I learned that everything had been submitted and completed, I was going to contact the rest of the board so that we could get together and have a meeting quickly so that we could approve the plan. The health agent was recommending approval of the plan because they had checked everything over in the latest version, and then the applications, everything was complete, as this was a formal request to have the well where it was on the plan. Because I think it would be dangerous for us to presume that's what somebody intended without any formal statement to that effect, and perhaps lock them into that by approving a plan that maybe they didn't intend for that to be there. So, however, then I learned that the demolition had taken place, and so that became a moot point, so we will be reviewing this and formally approving it at our next meeting. So, I did bring a copy of the plan, just if anyone cared to see what it is that we look at. Everything is detailed and provided on these plans. They are the documentation for everything that goes on regarding well and septic at a property. So that's the history of it. I think there were many other interpretations about what was happening, but that's what was happening. And there were lots of attempts, again, made by the staff to inform and keep the property owner aware of what was needed, what the options were, so that it could be taken care of.
So, the major part of the vote that you guys took on June 1st was to allow the demolition to proceed without a fully approved set of plans.
No.
Yes. Absolutely. Those plans were not 100% complete for the new house. The vote was to allow the demolition to happen, which is outside of your procedures, not your regulations, but your procedures, correct? You voted to allow that to happen, such that at a later date, you would sign off on the fully approved set of plans. They weren't approved. They weren't fully even, Ethan hadn't even gone through them at the meeting when you voted on it. Well,
Yes, he had.
they were designed for the house that was there. We all sat through it. We know that the plans were not 100%. The inverts couldn't have possibly been right because Paul came in with basically, here's what you asked for, and it wouldn't make sense for this system that would be a pump system to the original house to be designed for that system. The intent is, and was, to allow the demolition to happen because the demolition needed to happen to that house. None of what you just said has anything to do with tearing that old house down. None of it has anything to do with it at all.
It was pursuant to the sign-off by the Board of Health, so it could move on to the next step. The stepwise procedure says, thou shalt do such and such before the next thing happens. What we talked about at that variance hearing was, given the unusual circumstances of having a contaminated property for which the Conservation Commission has the responsibility to ensure that the property gets cleaned up appropriately, and the coordinating of bringing in equipment to put in the septic with the cleanup was beneficial to getting this property taken care of, that we would allow things to move ahead, but it was a recognition that we wouldn't require that the septic be connected to the existing house. We did make that adjustment at
Or
that
even
time.
designed to be connected to the existing
Right.
house.
We acknowledged that and said it's not practical, and there are a combination of factors going on here with the unusual circumstances around that. Now,
Okay, so
I'll back up
outside of
just a
that,
little
what
bit.
point do you sign off on a demo permit? Outside of having to hook up a septic system to a house that's about to be demoed, where is the
That
sign
has
off?
nothing to do with this particular property. You're mixing things up, and
I'm not quite sure I am. Where does the Board of Health sign off? Because one of the most recent demoed houses in Sherborn, and I don't remember the Board of Health signing off on anything except that we condemned the septic system when I tore my own house down. There is no Board of Health sign-off to allow, anyone in here can fill out a demo permit and demo their own house.
So the issue is, and this preceded me, but the Board of Health, which has been operating for decades and decades, came up with something to allow people to have a replacement system, because you get variances and waivers, and that's at the state level as well, where there are different things that can be done for a repair replacement than can be done for new construction. So the idea is to have a system in place that corresponds to the existing house. Then you're looking at an existing system, therefore these allowances, the variances in town, and the state level Title V allowances, just like this local upgrade approval that we are the agents to authorize in connection with these kinds of projects, can be done that couldn't be done for new construction. So if you have a blank slate of property, it's not considered a repair or upgrade.
Which is what we're going to have legal counsel look at, because whether you demo the house or not, you still don't have a blank slate.
Okay, so
in Title
this
V.
is getting probably beyond the level
So in any-
for this meeting, but I think we wanted to have some of this information come out just because I think it was a matter of public interest and concern this past week, but I don't think we can get too deep into the weeds tonight on this. But I do, from what I've heard, it sounds like this is another area maybe where some of the regulations don't really align all the time with the kind of objectives people might want to see from the Board of Health in terms of facilitating things like taking a house down. I don't know. Maybe this is the same as it happens in every town, but what I'm hearing sounds a little unusual.
Legal can take a look at it, but I know that the intent in the past, that this was actually a way for people to eventually demo a house, but to permit them to install systems that might not otherwise be feasible on a property, or to have other innovative alternative technologies and other things that could be brought in for repairs and upgrades that can't be done for new construction. Again, some of these approvals that were given for this property were Title V that also have that issue with new versus repair upgrade or repair replacement.
And what you're saying is it's new construction if the house is gone. It's not new construction if the house is still there.
And so they found these other past boards found ways to address this. And so things keep shifting. Again, as I said, if the issue was that it delayed demolition, it could have been done much earlier if the paperwork had been in order. If the plans hadn't changed midstream, they could have gone back to what was there, taken off the well and applied for the well later. And that was all explained. So it could have taken place several months earlier than it did.
All right, good.
Well, I just want to ask, what can the Board of Selectmen do to help on this situation? I think the answer is not much.
I don't know.
So I'm really wondering if we
I
haven't
would appreciate
independently.
if people could recognize that the Board of Health is not trying to, I don't know what reason we would have to try to make things complicated for people, because believe me, it takes a lot of staff time, all this back and
No,
forth.
I can't imagine one either.
And people debating for things that, they're stated, they're known. Again, the engineer involved is well acquainted with Sherborn procedures, so it's draining of the Board of Health resources to be dealing with this, and we're not trying to obstruct. We are trying to uphold the regulations. We can review it, we can have town council look at it and advise us. We're open to all of that. But again, these are decades of boards who have been working on this. A lot of what's designed is in response to certain situations in town and trying to make accommodations and find creative ways to address things without compromising. the integrity of well and septic and people's health down the line of the residents who are going to be living there. So there's not an attempt to stand in the way. There is an attempt to make sure that things are following a process and doing so consistently, and that's really all we're trying to do. And yet, there's certainly a lot of other interpretations out there, and I'm just not sure. One may not think it's necessary, but in the past, people who've written these things that we're trying to follow had reasons for doing it. It's not taken lightly, and I don't think it's been taken lightly by boards in the past either.
Well, I appreciate you coming in to explain the background, but I mean, this is an independent elected body, and if there's a complaint, I think these complaints should be referred to them, and I don't know why we're having, frankly, why we're having this
Well,
discussion.
I mean, each time one of these come up, we do get a lot of complaints, and we are pretty much helpless, but we don't want to say, so we try to talk to Board of Health and try to sort out what it is, but we're not experts in, because each item is different, we're not sitting through the meetings, but it does generate enough people complaining throughout that process that it seems to me there should be a better way of doing it. And I don't know it, and that's why I would have to ask town council, and that's why I was thinking if there was a discussion, if town council had a recommendation, and the selectmen were charging us with council putting that forward so you could be in one room with the building commissioner to discuss it, that could be productive. And then we won't have to deal with it the next time and the next time and the next time.
There is some overlap, too. It's not totally independently the Board of Health. I mean, the building department
commissioner is
reports
there.
to us.
Right.
So you can't just operate in a vacuum. Not all problems are just Board of Health issues. These are dangerous houses that need to be torn down. So the process doesn't just only involve one independently elected board.
The demo permit is actually issued by the building commissioner, and he
Correct.
issued it with contingents on things that will happen at the meeting coming up. It's just it's a little strange because the building's gone. That's
Okay.
so.
All right, well, thanks. Thanks for coming in, Daryl. Okay. We have selectmen reports.
Wait, could I just?
Oh, you want to talk about Farm Pond docks?
Farm docks, yeah.
Yeah, but on that, do we want to proceed that way and have council look at it a little more and propose something after she talks to Henry? I think on this particular issue, she had talked to Board of Health, but hadn't gotten in touch with the building commissioner. And then maybe bring something back and discuss them so that they have something in their hands in advance, basically.
I think we should, because this is not the first time this particular town council has looked at this exact situation. 74 Washington Street was opposite, but the same difference in our law or our procedure versus State Title V.
Okay.
That goes back as far as, I think that was 2007. It was a long battle.
Okay. So I'll talk to council and then try to schedule it on a future agenda.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the discussion we had before town meeting about trying to streamline and find best practices. It's not an intrusion on independent boards or independent
No, on the
elected boards
surface.
or appointed boards. It's really just trying to make the town function as efficiently and effectively as possible for the people who live here and pay taxes and want to do things with their land that they're entitled to do.
Right. Okay. On the docks, we had the docks out before Labor Day, which we had out before Labor Day last year. Some people have complained about that. It was of particular concern this year with the death of the reservation manager and staffing at the pond. I mean, safety is priority one. You have so many lifeguards that were heading away to school, and then we had somebody step up as a head guard to take over the operation, who had concerns.
Maybe that's because I grew up in a different era where I don't remember. I mean, there's no lifeguards there at night when it's closed. you close the parking lot, but, something could still happen. I don't know what the assumed risk is of having docks in there when it's,
It sounds like from what I'm hearing, Sean, it sounds like the issue is if you're going to have the pond staffed with lifeguards, you need to have enough lifeguards to do the job, and when the docks are in, they don't have enough lifeguards to do the job with the reduced staff. That's
You
what
can leave the
that's what I'm hearing.
docks.
or just leave the docks and don't staff it at all, and it's,
Don't staff, that is a possibility.
Which I think has been done in the past.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When the staffing ends, you just stop staffing it, and people are swimming at their own risk. You walk across the ice at your own risk.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's I guess a policy decision, but not one we have to decide now.
But we also can't leave docks in all year. So then at some point, you would have to have staff to pull the docks out when you decide when it's time to pull them out.
All right.
So that's the other problem.
I think we've exhausted this one.
And another reason that came up last year was...
I guess we haven't exhausted this one.
I'm sorry. The bathhouse had...
You were wrong.
The bathroom was closed last year, early, for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's... and
Yeah,
that caused
I
problems.
think we've exhausted this one.
Okay.
Selectmen reports? Anybody?
Yeah,
Paul?
we have the Board of Selectmen had a system that goes back decades where we make sure that the open meeting law is complied with by our different boards and committees because they file their minutes. And so I read all the minutes. And I noticed that there is a board that hasn't filed any minutes in a while, going back to January. This is the Personnel Board. So I have to ask the question, are they defunct or is there an open meeting law violation?
No, I've been at the meetings and I've had them, they've been editing minutes and approving them, so
Right.
I'm not sure why they're not.
Well, the
Maybe they're
last
not in the
one-
reading
They're
file.
supposed to be sending them to me.
The last one is January of
Okay, I'll get them.
2016.
But there are two attorneys on there and they do know the open meeting and they have been conscientious of it. I don't know why they're not out there. They have been doing them and approving them.
Okay,
Yeah.
because every board and committee has to maintain minutes.
Mhm.
There was a time that we had a number of boards and committees that didn't believe they had an obligation to
Yeah, no,
maintain
that's
minutes at all.
not the case there. Julia Jacobson is the clerk who's been doing the...
It sounds like we've got an answer to this one, too, which is that Diane's going to get the minutes and give them to Paul and put them in the minutes file. Okay, good. So meeting calendar, Paul, we have this meeting on the 13th, and now you've identified that as a meeting you can't make. I know that was scheduled specially, David, with the Middlesex retirement. Who's
On
coming
the
in that day?
13th, it was Tom Gibson, Middlesex, Middlesex County Retirement System.
And that was at the request of a couple of the Sherborn School Committee members who thought it would be helpful to have a joint meeting and
Right.
and see that. So I don't know if it's really feasible to reschedule that meeting at this stage. We don't have to put everything on that agenda if there's going to be people
Right.
missing and there's important things. I mean, in terms of signing a warrant, we would know what the warrant is at that point.
There's also a classification hearing that night that I believe already...
It's been noticed.
Noticed in the paper.
Okay. Which is usually pretty much of a formality, but it's still something we need to keep moving along. I know the collector was anxious about getting that certified as quickly as possible so we can get the state to do
Right.
its job. Are you someplace, Paul, where you can call in, or?
No, I'll be at a selectmen's meeting.
Okay.
So it's active.
I mean, we can reschedule the items that can be rescheduled
But
to a
it's not
later
as
meeting.
good a selectmen's meeting as this one.
Maybe better.
Oh, wait, they pay you money, never mind.
Okay. And we have a meeting on the 15th posted, but that's for the 40B public training.
Right.
I could do a meeting that day.
And I guess that was, David's suggestion was maybe we just move some of the things from the 13th over to the 15th.
Well, I think the reason we didn't have the 15th was because some couldn't make the 15th.
Well, I think the other reason was because the Middlesex retirement guy couldn't do it. I think that was,
couldn't do the 15th.
I think you told me there were a few dates that he could do, and the 13th
He could
was
do
one
the
of them.
13th and 14th, but not the 15th.
Yeah, so, okay. So do people want to set a meeting rather than the 7 PM public training on the 15th? Do people want to say, we'll get here at 6 o'clock or something, and try to get through some items ahead of time?
Yeah, that'd be
Is
great.
that all right for everybody?
That's great.
Sean, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think it's preferable.
Okay, so the 13th will be primarily the Middlesex presentation on the agenda, which we can't change.
The classification hearing, is that?
No, we got to do the classification hearing because it's advertised. And then the other items, though, like I think the warrant, we could probably approve on the 15th and post on the 16th.
Yeah, let me go back and
The only thing that does is mess up his meeting on the 14th.
Which part?
Well, we're planning on having.
They had their meeting scheduled for the
We're gonna have meetings
14th.
on the 14th and 21st to hear the proponents before our public hearing of the warrant articles. We could probably do it all on the 21st. I mean,
Well, the warrant will be, the warrant will be closed.
It just won't be, it won't be,
oh, it won't be.
it won't be formally signed, but it'll be closed.
So we won't have anything unexpected
Right.
still coming up.
That's right.
There could be stuff coming up.
You could, on the 13th, you could still vote 3, sign it, and post it on the 14th if you wanted to. Or you can wait and just do it on the 15th.
I don't think it necessarily needs to be posted as long as it's closed. We can start discussing.
Yeah, so it will be.
Yeah, it closes by operation of our last vote on
Right.
September 8th.
We're fine then. having a
Okay,
meeting.
all right.
I rescheduled a meeting from the 7th to the 14th because I didn't want to have a meeting before it closed.
Okay, all right.
Oh, okay.
All right,
And
fine.
then, just while you're talking about meeting schedules, I assume our public hearing on the 5th is going to be, you guys are going to be there as well?
Oh, that's a good point. So we need to schedule or post a hearing for October 5th.
We already
Okay.
scheduled it.
Okay,
No, we
good.
didn't. The 5th?
The 5th.
October 5th.
What?
So you have the 5th advisory at 7 PM, this joint meeting.
Yeah, okay. At 7
Did you want to
PM.
meet, did you want to schedule something at 6 PM prior to that?
We can decide, can't we decide on that next time we meet? We'll know a little more what's on for that night. I assume we may want to and just use that as our first October meeting.
Right.
Okay?
That may be a good occasion to decide what we're going to say to advisory, whether we support things, we want things, or don't want things.
Well, hopefully we have that wrapped up on the 29th.
Okay.
Any leftover items, we could, if we have to come back, then we could do that on the 5th.
Okay. All right.
So Diane, our public hearing is going to be the full room up here on the 5th?
You always get the full room there.
Okay. Just wanted to
Okay.
double check.
All right, so we have payroll warrant here. We don't have any minutes, we do a payroll warrant. 2 of them, actually. August 18th, I don't know how we missed that one, but apparently we did. And September 1st, do we have a motion to approve this payroll warrant? This is for the TA's pay, because he can't sign his own.
All right, but can
Warrant.
I move that we permanently delegate it to the chair?
It's on the agenda for the 29th? When did you put it on the agenda?
There were a couple of the modernization type things on, and I have it on for the 29th.
Okay, so we're gonna suffer through the next month of.
But did you get paid? Did you get paid? He says there's 2. Nobody held back your check, right?
Do I need an attorney?
So we have two warrants here. Can somebody move?
There's 3 right next to you.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second to approve these?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving? Chuck voted no. Okay. I'll send that one this way. And send that one this way. Thanks, Paul. Okay. Now, is there any other business besides the executive session?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to move that the Board of Selectmen enter into an executive session not to return to the open session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position and the chair so declares pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, with respect to the following pending cases: Stevens versus Board of Health, the Fields at Sherborn versus Zoning Board of Appeals, and Conservation Commission versus the Fields at Sherborn.
How was your trip?
I need a second of the motion and a roll call vote. Second? Okay. Mr. Colleen seconded. Having a second, we'll now have a roll call vote.
Any
Mr.
pictures?
Colleen?
Aye.
Mr. Brandon?
Yes.
Mr. Yan? Mr. Durancis?
Aye.
And I will be aye also. By a vote of 5-0, the open session is now closed. We will not be returning to open session. The Board of Selectmen is now in executive session.